This was an airplane that should never have flown. And a crew that achieved the impossible. For 32 minutes, they kept 200 tons of metal airborne without a tail and without controls. And they still lost. Today, the longest agony in aviation history. Japan Airlines Flight 123. August 12, 1985. Japan Airlines Boeing 747-100, registration JA 8119, prepares for Flight 123 from Tokyo to Osaka. On board are 509 passengers, many families with children traveling for the Obon holidays. The aircraft is 11 years old. At its controls are 3 experienced pilots. Captain Masami Takahama, First Officer Yutaka Sasaki, and Flight Engineer Hiroshi Takeuchi. At 1812 local time, the overloaded airliner lifts off from Haneda Airport's runway. 12 minutes into the flight, at an altitude of 24,000 feet, a deafening explosion rocks the tail section, audible throughout the cabin. The vertical stabilizer, the aircraft's tail fin, completely separates from the fuselage. The cabin undergoes instantaneous decompression. Oxygen masks drop. Pressure plummets to zero. But this is only the beginning of the nightmare. The tail separation severs all 4 independent hydraulic systems. The control yoke, rudder pedals, ailerons, flaps, all become useless. The pilots are holding not a control column, but dead weight. The crew declares an emergency, setting their transponder to code 7700. Tokyo, Japan Air 123. We have a problem. Request return to Haneda. But there is nothing to control with. Captain Takahama realizes. The only things left are 2 of the 4 engines. By increasing thrust on the left and decreasing on the right, they can attempt to turn the behemoth. It's like trying to steer a truck using only the gas pedals. At an altitude where oxygen is already scarce, their brains begin to suffer from hypoxia. They don't put on their oxygen masks, they are too busy fighting. For 18 minutes, the depressurized airliner remains at a lethal altitude. The aircraft begins to oscillate violently. The nose pitches up 20 degrees, then plunges down, banks left, then right. Passengers are thrown about the cabin. In the cockpit, the pilots hear only the roar of wind through the rupture and the blaring warning sirens. They try to extend the flaps, retract the landing gear, nothing works. The hydraulics are dead. Every engine adjustment is an agonizing course correction, costing them superhuman effort. 32 minutes. That's how long passes from the explosion to the impact with the ground. In that time, the crew achieves the nearly impossible. Using only the engines, they turn the Uncontrollable 747 through a full 360 degrees and point it back toward Tokyo. They fight for every second, for every 100 meters of altitude. Over the radio, it's heard. Japan 123. The aircraft is controllable. A moment later. Uncontrollable, descending. Their voices are calm, almost monotone. Shock and hypoxia are taking their toll. The ground approaches. Mountains. Right. Right. We'll hit the mountain. The captain applies full power. The nose pitches up. The aircraft nearly enters a spin. The final seconds. With its right wing, it shears the treetops on the slopes of Mount Takamigara. Another 500 meters. Impact. 520 people perish instantly. But 4 people survive. All were seated in the tail section. They will wait for help for 14 hours. The rescue operation turns into a tragic farce due to bureaucracy. The military, police, and civil services argue over jurisdiction while people die from their injuries and hypothermia. The investigation will reveal a monstrous chain of events. 7 years prior to the disaster, this aircraft had struck its tail on the runway at Osaka Airport. The repair of the rear pressure bulkhead was performed with critical violations. Instead of the required double row of rivets, a single row was installed. Metal fatigue. On August 12, 1985, 12 minutes into the flight, the bulkhead ruptures. Compressed cabin air bursts out, rips off the tail fin, and severs all hydraulic lines. Boeing engineers had warned of this possibility. They were ignored. This is not just a crash. It is a 32-minute feat of a crew fighting the inevitable with absolutely no tools. It is a systemic failure of quality control and accountability. Following the disaster, the president of Japan Airlines will resign. The chief engineer responsible for the repair will commit seppuku, leaving a note. I atone with my death. Flight 123 will forever change global aviation standards for repair, inspection, and certification. But its primary lesson lies in those 32 minutes. When the system failed, 3 people did everything within human power. It just wasn't enough.